Hey everyone, welcome back to Vanlife Unfiltered. I'm Tori Delori, and today we have a very special, another bonus episode. I'm super excited. We're talking to Lewis Cole, who actually converted his Volkswagen into a Volkswagen. So he's actually traveling across America right now in that vehicle, and he converted it himself during COVID. And he's going to tell us a little bit about his story, what he's doing, how his trip is going. Hi,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
So, where are you right now? How is your van doing, or your
Well,
vehicle?
I don't want to give too much away because
Of
I'm
course.
actually quite far behind in my YouTube series because I've been editing real time, like on the go. But yeah, it's been definitely been a challenging trip, but I think that's part of what you're signing up for when you go on van life adventures.
Of course, of course. So, I would love to know the beginning of your journey, how you got started in this, why you chose to convert it to electric. Just what was the beginning of this journey like for you?
Well, I mean, how far back do you want to go?
Well, I did watch some of your YouTube things that you've been talking about, so we could definitely go back to the beginning and talk about what really inspired you to want to live a nomadic lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah, let's do that. And then tell me if I'm talking too much, and then I'll speed up. So yeah, so I would say that I can't remember the first time I was excited about living out of vehicles, but I definitely remember as a kid looking at like sprinter vans and stuff on the road, and some of these big vans, and being like, oh, that could make an awesome house. And I think this was way before van life became a term even, or trendy. I got my first van in 2000 and I want to say like 2001, 2002. Um, no, actually, wait, no, it was 2004. I got my first van in 2004, and or early 2000s, and I was using it just as transport to start with. I put a couple of hammocks up in the back, and I used to do these epic road trips with all of my friends, and we would like drive from the UK into Europe on the ferry, and then do like a week traveling around, just having adventures. And I think that's something I always loved about living out of a vehicle, is like having the freedom to, you know, every day we'd be sitting down like, oh, where should we drive tonight? And then we would just vote and pick a new place to drive to. So it gives such a sense of freedom being on the road, rather than having to like pre-book and fly places and all of that. And living in Europe as well, you can drive to so many countries so quickly. So that was always really appealing to me. And later the same year I bought it, later that year, I actually ended up leaving my job because I just didn't really vibe with the office job. It was fun, but I was like, this isn't for me anymore. I'm sure a lot of people watching can relate. And yeah, then I was like, well, I could live in my van. Like, that would save me a lot of rent, and it would free me up to do a lot of other things with my time, because I think a lot of people spend so much of their time making to pay for comforts that we don't necessarily need.
Mm.
So for a few years, I was living in my van, just having the time of my life in my early 20s, like cruising around, just getting up to mischief. I didn't really do much of a build out in that van. I literally just put some blankets in it and a hammock, and had a little gas stove. So it wasn't really built out as a proper van. But I would say that, my early 20s, that was when I kind of fell in love with the idea of doing van life and traveling in a van. And I've had a multitude of vehicles since then. Double-decker buses I've lived in. I lived in a double-decker bus for like 4 years. Driving that around was amazing. And then more recently, moved back into my school bus with my wife. And we've been traveling pretty much for the last year and a half in the school bus up until the beginning of this year. And then that was really beautiful. That we actually managed to get that. It was there was a documentary on Netflix called Expedition Happiness, and it's a German couple were the ones who actually kitted that bus out, and we ended up getting that bus, and then we drove it down to Costa Rica from North America. So yeah, it's been a wild adventure. And then more recently, this trip. So about 5 years ago, I got a Volkswagen camper van, 1973. And that had always been a dream of mine to own one of these kind of vintage Volkswagen vans because they're so iconic. And honestly, the engine that comes with it, it's like an air-cooled engine, is a nightmare. They really easily overheat and break. So I broke the engine. We did take it on quite a big road trip, but I ended up breaking the engine. And then end of 2019, kind of just before COVID hit, I was looking into options to put a new engine in, and I met a guy who had put an electric engine in his, like an electric motor, and that's what kind of got the cogs turning. And I was like, oh, I want to do this. So 3 months during 2020, during lockdown, I took on this project and fully converted the van to electric. So it's running on Tesla batteries. And then more recently, me and my wife want to move back to the UK next year because we're having our first baby. And
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And I decided, well, there's no point leaving the van in Los Angeles where we were living. Why don't I try and do an ambitious road trip across the US and then ship it to the UK, which is the plan. Originally, I wanted to do it even more ambitiously. I wanted to charge it the entire time off solar panels, but I'm lucky I didn't manage to pull that together because it just wouldn't have worked this time of year. There hasn't been enough sun. But I do think if I timed it right and I gave myself enough time, I could drive across the US with a bunch of solar panels that I would have to set up each time I wanted to charge. But that at some stage I will set up that as a charging option.
Yeah. So what is your battery capacity and range what is the system that you're using right now look like?
So I've got 70 kilowatt hours of lithium batteries that have come straight out of a Tesla. Because my van is heavy and very badly aerodynamic, I'm only getting about 150 miles of range on a flat road. As soon as you add mountains and cold temperatures in, that reduces even more. So that's been a kind of a learning curve. I don't think, even the modern electric camper vans, I don't think we're quite at the stage where they compete in terms of distance. And if you wanted to cover a lot of mileage on a road trip, they're not really ideal for that yet. But if you're doing short distance or you're just cruising around town, it's been the dream vehicle. But I've had to learn a lot about like range anxiety and not making it to places that I wanted to, and having to figure out alternative options for charging.
Yeah, I saw in one of your videos that you try to always drive at 50 miles per hour. How has that been?
Yeah, I mean, those vans originally you didn't want to put them that anyway because they're kind of they're just old, and I'm sure even when they were new, people weren't driving them at like 70 on the highway.
Yeah.
So I've just been the interesting thing is, with the electric motor, I could easily drive at 70 on the highway because it's capable of it, but the battery would drain too quickly. So yeah, I've just been sticking to like 50, and it's taken me time, but it's part of the deal, really.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the conversion process of turning it into an electrical vehicle like for you?
Well, it was a very new thing because I do see myself as handy. Like, I do feel like I can do things and build things, but this was like next level learning, how do electric vehicles work? How do you set them up? I had to retrofit all of these batteries that we took out of a wrecked Tesla to mount them onto the bottom underneath of the van. So I had to build all of these custom aluminum and then I had to take the engine out and fit the electric motor onto the transmission, and then I had to kind of figure out all the wiring and electronics. So it was quite a big undertaking, and like I said, it took me like 3 months of like following wiring diagrams and ordering in different parts. But all in, I think it cost me about $20,000 to do the whole conversion, and 3 months of my time. And a good friend of mine, Jay, he's done a few of these builds, and he has a YouTube channel too. But he's the one that kind of coached me through the whole conversion.
That's awesome. When you're actually living in the van as you're going across America, what is the difference for you living in an electrical vehicle versus living in like a gas vehicle or diesel, whatever you had before, even in a bus? What are some of the differences that you found in this vehicle living versus the others?
I mean, I've not lived in a van this small for a while. So like we had one in Europe we drove around, which was a bigger, I think like a Renault Master, like a bigger van that was a bit more, it just more spacious. I feel like I've got a pretty low requirement for luxury. So I don't need a lot really to be happy. And honestly, the main difference was like I decided not only to drive electric but also cook my food electric and heat the van electric, and that's been the biggest challenge, because in Renault Master and in my double deck and in our school bus we had these little diesel heaters that just pump out hot air and they run straight off the diesel tank. But trying to run heating off electric heating is very, very power consuming.
Of course. What heating system did you say you were using?
I'm just using like an electric oil heater. They're not even really designed for vehicles, but they seem to be the most efficient because when you turn them off, they still maintain heat for a while. And then I've got an electric blanket. And then I've been cooking my food on an electric induction stove, but it took me 5 days to find the correct saucepan to work on an induction stove. I kept on buying the wrong ones, which is kind of hilarious. So one of my biggest struggles was trying to boil pasta for the first 5 days of the trip.
What have been some of the greatest perks or things that you have found have gotten better by having an electrical vehicle?
Ooh, well, firstly, when you're driving at a slower speed, they're silent, which is really nice. I think overall they're more reliable than the older, especially if you're driving an older van like a Volkswagen van. Like I have a friend and he travels in his and he's constantly replacing the engine. I feel like he must have done like 10 engine replacements. So I feel like I'm less anxious that the engine's going to fail me. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's also just being unique. There's not many electric camper vans on the roads yet, and I hopefully over the next few years we'll see more and more. I know VW are doing their like ID Buzz or whatever, which I don't think looks as classic, but is obviously going to be much better for traveling in.
Absolutely. What would be your advice to someone who wants to get an electrical vehicle as a camper van?
Well, I guess my advice would be if you're planning to do long distances, you might want to wait a little while until the vans with the longer range come out, because I was at a climate conference event in Pittsburgh in November, and I checked out all of these new delivery vans that they're doing, the electric ones. So I think Rivian have one that Amazon are going to be using, and there was a few others. But even for them, their range is like 150 to 200 miles on a charge, which is fine when you're delivering and then going back to the depot each day. But if you're gonna kit out one of those electric vans for camping out of and road tripping, you know, 150 to 200 miles a charge isn't very far. You're basically then only really traveling like 3 hours a day. But maybe for some people that's fine because they want to travel at a slower pace. But yeah, and then just like what I've noticed on this trip is like trying to track down chargers that are going to work. And honestly, most of the time I've been charging in RV parks with a 50 amp hookup, because normally these RVs you hook in like, you know, power to power their washing machines and stuff, or whatever these massive RVs have. So the 220 volt 50 amp hookup means I can charge my battery in 7 hours, which isn't very fast compared to Tesla chargers, but it seems fast for me because when I'm charging it off a 110 outlet, it's like 30 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's definitely some of, you know, talk about some of the positives. What are some of the things that have just been maybe driving you crazy, or some of the things that have been really hard for you traveling in the electric vehicle?
Yeah, I would say phoning ahead to RV parks, finding places to charge, and then some of the chargers where you can pay to charge, that they just have electric chargers randomly around different places. Some of those don't work. So you might arrive somewhere with barely any battery, which happened in my second YouTube episode. I arrived with like 4% battery, and it was like out of service.
Yeah.
So I then, you know, imagine arriving at a gas station and it's the only gas station for miles, and you're out, your gas tank's empty, and then they're like, oh, you know, all of the pumps aren't working. So it's I think as the electric charging networks improve, which they're going to improve, and there's more available, I think it's going to be, I think I'm going to look back at this trip in maybe 10 years time and laugh at how difficult it's been for me, because I do think we'll see far more electric camper vans in 10 years.
I agree. I think that we have to definitely start somewhere, and I think your trip and you documenting it and sharing it is definitely a really great place where the people are going to be able to watch it and say, okay, like I can do that too, and I can figure out I can do this maybe differently, or, you know, it's all a learning experience, and we're all, you know, watching. And I've loved your YouTube videos. They're very exciting. Maybe exciting sometimes in a bad way for you, a little bit too eventful maybe. Yes, with
Yeah.
smooth trip. But what is van life with a smooth trip ever? I mean,
Exactly, yeah.
It's unrealistic. So what would be your advice for anyone who wants to just start a nomadic lifestyle, no matter what vehicle it's in? They're just looking to get on the road. What would your advice to them be?
I would say just get ready for an adventure, because things aren't always going to go smooth. But I feel like that's part of embracing, you know, the amount of amazing people I've met on the road that have been so helpful. But just also, I honestly have made friends, which I think when you're not living nomadically and you're living with a bit more, when you've planned out your trips, and I don't know, I just feel like you're not allowing for the more spontaneous moments. So I would say just you know, maybe let go of some of your expectations, but get ready to have some really exciting moments that, you know, you can't really plan these kind of adventures, you know, they happen because of the lifestyle. So yeah, I mean, I can't think of a more adventurous way to live, really. Beginning of last year, when me and my wife moved out of our rental place in LA, it was exciting because most of our roommates moved into vehicles, either school buses or vans, and it was really exciting to see everybody we know kind of living out in vehicles at the time. So I was like, oh, this is so fun.
That is awesome. That's very exciting. What is next for you after this trip?
Well, we've got a baby on the way, like I mentioned.
Yes.
So we're actually renting a property in Brighton in the UK, which is on the south coast. And we're going to bunker down for a while just to have the baby and kind of the first little few months of being parents, and just kind of vibe out how we feel about travel. But I'm also really inspired by a lot of couples I know that are traveling with their kids, and I'm sure that's on the cards. But it'll be nice to have a home base, because we've been this recent stint of being nomadic, it's been over a year and a half of not having a home base. So I'm ready. I think it's good to have seasons in your life, and I'm ready for a new season of having some space. And I think I would love not only to kit out the interior of the electric van, but also probably get a slightly more safer and reliable vehicle and kit that out, as well as like a long range road tripping camper van when we get to the UK, because the Renault Master that we had last summer, I ended up selling to my parents, and they've been camping out of that. So we need to get a new camper van in the UK.
Understandable. Yeah, it sounds like a lot. I absolutely agree with the seasons of life and getting to go through those things. And I think van life is a really great way to find new avenues. And so where can people find you and your different videos that you're making and where you're documenting your trip?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram, Louis Cole. It's Louis with an S. So some people think it's Lewis, but it's Louis. And then YouTube is just youtube.com/Louis with an S. And that's where I'm trying. I've done daily videos, but I'm not able to upload them daily. So I've got a new one coming tomorrow morning. So yeah, get ready to experience the rest of the adventure. It gets very wild. I would say this is a level 10 out of 10 on the adventure scale for me.
Oh my goodness. I was looking through your YouTube channel and I saw something about a plane, but I didn't get to see any of those videos because I was binge watching your Volkswagen videos this morning. Were you traveling in a plane? What was up with the plane?
Yeah, so in 2017, I bought a Cessna single-engine plane, and my friend's a pilot. I'm not. But anyway, together with him piloting, we circumnavigated the world in 3 months. We left California, and we went east around the world, and it was...
You're frozen again. I'm so sorry. I can't hear anything right now.
Sorry. Where did you hear up to?
After 3 months.
Oh, so we flew around the world in 3 months. I ended up making a documentary of the whole trip as well as the vlogs on YouTube. So that was kind of wild, that trip.
It sounds wild. That is so incredible. I'm sure it was a lot of fun, and I hope to get to watch those on YouTube too, because I love your documenting process, and it is so awesome. I know you have a lot to do today, so we don't want to take up too much of your time, but we appreciate you being here. But is there anything else you want to leave everybody with, either about your journey or van life in general or anything like that?
I would just say, a big part of why I document and share my life is to inspire others that there's other options, and I was chatting to someone, I think 2 days ago, and they were like, what gave you the courage to lead your life like this and not to lead an ordinary life? And I don't know, for me it was like I think sometimes we're held back by the fear of what, how are things going to pan out, what if this happens, what if that happens. But I feel like if anyone's watching that is a bit nervous or fearful to step into the unknown, I would just encourage you to, because we've only got one life to live, and and maybe van life's not for you, but definitely step into your outside your comfort zone. And I would say traveling the world is one of the most eye-opening and impactful things I've chosen to do. So yeah, I guess I'd leave on that note, really.
That is a great note to leave on. Thank you so much for your advice, for sharing your trip with us, and we wish you the best of luck. I'm sure there will be more ups and downs, as there always is, but I hope you get there
follow the Volkswagen account as well, the Volkswagen. That's I'm going to be posting more on that with the van adventure.
Sounds good. We will tag it in the repost when we post this live, and we'll tag it in our story as well if anyone wants help finding that, so we can make sure to share that as well. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Yeah, of course. Enjoy your trip. Thank you everyone for watching.
Bye.